Hello everyone, you are listening to yourradio.com. This is DJ Sakara, and I am very happy to be with you again this weekend for yet another one of our community interviews. And this week we have some very special guests from a shard that we haven't had the pleasure of having any guests from yet. And it is a shard that I have tremendous curiosity about. My goodness, I can't speak today. So as I was saying, a shard that I have tremendous curiosity about and that I believe many of you will also have great interest for. And it is Siege Perilous. Our guests are none other than the DTA Trade Association, and as their name indicates, they are actually a crafters and merchants guild on Siege Perilous, which is really interesting, especially considering that most of us always think of Siege as being a hardcore, no-holds-barred PvP shard. And so looking at Siege through the eyes of crafters and merchants should be very revealing and informative. And so, as usual, if you have any questions or comments for our guests, you are more than welcomed to post them on our IRC, and I will gladly forward your questions to them. So, without further delay, I will introduce our guests today and give them a chance to say howdy so that you can familiarize yourselves with their voices. And so we have Pirate, the GM of DTA, if you want to say hello.
Hello, and thanks for having us.
And we have Filthy McNasty, one of her members, if you want to say hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm really a nice guy. Don't listen to the name.
We will take you on your word on that one. And we have Hope. Say hi, Hope.
Hi, everybody, and I can vouch. Filthy is a very nice guy.
And we have Kira as well. Say hello, Kira.
Hi, Sakara. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And I believe I haven't forgotten anyone, have I? And we have, as usual, our local brat, Viceroy, but you already know his voice, so I will not give him the pleasure of saying hi. And but moving on to our very first questions. As usual, the questions are addressed to every one of our guests. If you want to answer or comment, just wave to me, and I will let you go ahead and say what you want to say. So the first question is actually addressed mostly to Pyrite, who is the current GM of the guild. And the question is, are you the founder of the DTA Trade Association? And if yes, what inspired you to start this guild?
Well, I was considered one of the founders. There were actually 4 of us that began it in the first weeks of Siege. A group of smiths who were working to GM smithing in the very first days of Siege got together, of course met at the Forge in DTA, and decided that it would be a good idea to form a guild of honest merchants to try to become known as that on Siege. The first GM was actually Brunner, and he left the game after about 2 years, and I became GM then.
And how long has your guild been in existence?
Since Siege began, just a few weeks after it started. That would have been in 1999.
Oh, wow. That's been quite a bit of time. And as I understand it, you guys are basically crafters and merchants. Is that really mostly what you do, or do you do other things as well? Do you have, like, different type of players in your guild?
Oh, yes, we have lots of different types of players. Early on, when we first began, many of the players had a crafting skill plus warrior skill, so they could go out and hunt and fight. As it grew, part of the need was to have all kinds of characters. We needed resource gatherers. A lot of people just were miners or lumberjacks. But also people wanted to be able to go out and hunt, so we had those too. Of course, as we go out and start hunting, we get attacked by PKs, so some of us developed into warriors also.
So basically, you have pretty much every possible template in your guild, even though you are basically crafter.
Yes, I began strictly as a crafter and stayed that way for nearly 2 years until we got AOS. I had never done any hunting on my own before, and I was strictly a blacksmith who worked at a shop outside the U Gate. And AOS changed all that when they made GM armor and arms kind of useless. So I started to learn to go out and do champ spawns, and now I've become a hunter too.
Wow, that is quite a that is quite a shift from being originally a smith. Now, question for you. We're actually going to get back to this how AOS changed things for you. But just to finish about your guild, what are your recruiting policies? I mean, because since you have pretty much everything other than just crafters, if somebody wants to join your guild, basically, why would they want to join your guild, and how would you go about having these people, allowing these people into your guild?
I think people want to join us because we're a very good group of friends. We work together on hunts and doing champ spawns now, and the way that someone might want to join our guild is to come to our meetings. We do have 2 regular meetings a week, and we go out and we hunt together. And as long as you become acquainted with someone in the guild, we like to give everyone a fair chance to try and join.
Okay, but do you in any way like really fear having people join in for the sole purpose of PKing you guys and looting you guys, especially considering you are mostly crafters? And so let's say I was a guild PK, I would probably have a field day, joining a crafters guild and basically slaughtering everyone. Yes, Filthy.
Yeah, and that's a big concern of ours, but one of the main policies in becoming a member of DTA and maintaining membership of DTA is a strict honesty code, I guess you would say. If you do something out of the realm to another guildmate and it's proven, you're just not around very long. We're basically a very honest group of people that help each other out, and if you're not going to fall within that guidelines, you don't need to be around us.
Alrighty, Kira, go ahead.
Yes, remember this is Siege. If you only have one character here, so if you do something to someone or to a whole bunch of people, you have really not many options left but deleting your character, and you don't want to do that if you have your fighting skills.
Very true. And now going back a bit to actually something that you brought up and that I was planning to ask you about. You said that you now have to start doing some hunting, even champ spawns, because of AOS, how AOS changed so many things with item properties and whatnot, and the fact that the game has become very much item-based now. But I always assumed that as a crafter and a merchant, a player on Siege Perilous would be doing extremely well, since there's no insurance and you are limited to one character, as Kira was saying, and therefore I think most people would rather be hunting than crafting all day, and therefore there would be a very limited number of crafters, and so you should be doing awesome business. But I have a feeling you're saying that's not the case anymore. How is it really for a merchant, financially speaking, now on Siege? Yes, Pyrite.
You can still do very fine as a merchant on Siege. My original craft was smithing, and that's what I really liked to do the most. Of course, that kind of went away, but you can still be a tailor and sell as much as you want to put out on your vendor and work as hard as you want. I do still run vendors with carpentry items and do quite well with that. However, I also have more than one account, and I think that most people on Siege do have more than one account now. In other words, my hunter is different than my crafting character.
But basically, you still do fairly well. You don't really, I mean, to what extent has AOS affected your crafting? Is it really a lot or just semi? Because there is quite a bit of, there's so many new artifacts now in game, and I don't know what the drop rate for minor artifacts was on Siege, but I know on Production Start it was just downright ridiculous to the point where right now you can hardly give away minor artifacts because everyone and their brothers got like 50,000 of them, and so has that really affected you guys on Siege much, or is it pretty much, just a bit more of those, but not really all that much? Yes, Filthy.
Right. I've never been a crafter. I've owned a crafter for a little while, and I just couldn't do it because I don't like the template very much. It's boring to me. But here on Siege, the only things I really buy from crafters are the leather armor and potions. Other than that, the weapons, any metal armor, any things like that, it's better to go farming for. I get repair deeds and enhancements done by blacksmiths and tailors and bow crafters, but other than that, the items that you get off of monsters are of better quality for PvP than are just survival in general against monsters than what we can make.
I hear what you're saying. Hope, go ahead.
I just thought I would add that, when a PK kills you, that they don't necessarily dry loot you every time that they kill you either. They, take something to take you out of the fight, and so you can't join in. But, to think that every time you die that you're going to have to replace everything is not, entirely true.
I was actually wondering about that, but we will have a chance to discuss the PvP aspect a bit more further down the road, so we will get back to this a little later. Now, the question is, actually, Pyrite, you mentioned that you have more than a lot of Siege players have more than one account, and I was kind of wondering about that, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I exclusively play Siege Perilous and I'm limited to one character per account, what kind of character would I really want to play? I know in my case it really wouldn't be much of a problem because I do have a ridiculous number of accounts, and my bank account's not happy about it, but that's a different debate. For the people who do only have one, maximum two accounts, isn't it rather limiting, gameplay-wise, to be a crafter? And for those that really mostly exclusively play a crafter or merchant, how do you make the game fun, and what do you do when you're not so much in the crafting mood? Considering you need a lot of skills to be a complete crafter or as complete a crafter as possible, it makes it a little difficult to have variety in your gameplay. Yes, Kira?
I think the main rule on Siege still has to be that you play the character you want to be. You should choose by what you like to play and then play that. You don't necessarily want to play the best PvP template or anything, because that changes from month to month really. So just play what you like to be, and you will find people who help you play that. And even if you get killed, you can ask your friends to help you, and well, basically you can maintain any template. You may want to have majory in your template, because that way you can gate. We have no recall, remember. So the only way to move around is by gates. So you need majory anyway, and that way you can cast a couple of earth elementals, and you can deal with quite a few monsters.
You're right. That is a way of looking at it. But at the same time, with the skill cap, being forced to have majory, at least enough majory to be able to cast gates. Mind you, you could always use scrolls, even if you don't have the actual enough skills per se to do it. But it kind of limits you in the kind of templates you can have when you have to have gating. And I'm actually wondering if Sacred Journey even works for paladins. But yes, Filthy, go ahead.
No, Sacred Journey does not work. But along the lines of what Quira said, was that you basically have to do your template the way you enjoy it, whether you want to be a crafter or a tamer or whatever. And regardless of what you've built your template around on Siege, you have to have friends. That's all there. You cannot survive alone on Siege, and that's why Siege is, to me, better than other shards, and that's why they came up with all these upgrades, was to force people to play together, because you can't go farming a lot of the new stuff by yourself. But on Siege, that just made it even harder. You have to have more friends to go out farming, say the Dark Father or whatever, because not only are you fighting the Dark Father, you're fighting the PKs also. So it forces you to have friends and play together, and that's what's I find really enjoyable about Siege.
Well, I think the whole community aspect is something that does come back quite a bit, and actually not only regarding Siege but everything else. I think the developers are really trying to stress that, and as you said, it is very obvious with the latest expansion. And during the interview we had with Mr. Tact, he also said that he is trying to push players to play together a lot more, which we're not really seeing all that much now on most production shards, where everybody's doing their own little thing on their own. But you're saying that people can pretty much play every template that they want, and I think that's really cool, because right now on production shards, everybody is pretty much playing the same template, especially if you're a PvPer. It seems that you only have certain very specific type of templates people will be playing. You can't really have any variety that you want, because there's so many specific templates that are overpowered and this and that, and everybody wants to be on the winning side all the time. So even when they go do their little solo fighting, and so there are a lot of very similar templates. But now, you're talking about how you cannot survive on Siege if you don't have friends. But how do you feel? How do you feel about life on Siege in general? I mean, how dangerous is it really? I mean, Siege has a reputation of being, as my coined sentences, people make fun of it all the time, as Siege being rampant with bloodthirsty savages and raving lunatics and whatnot. But you guys seem to be saying that, life on Siege really isn't all that bad. But how is it like, really? I mean, do you fear getting PK'd every single time you step out of the house, or is it fairly safe? Yes, Filthy.
Along those lines, it's fairly safe, especially when you're in. Along the lines, you go and we go to a champ spawn. We have a fairly large guild, and so if the PKs come in, they have to come in with some numbers on us anyway. And it's part of the excitement, though. You know, it makes it not. We all know it's a game and everything, but it makes it more realistic to go out there knowing there's bad guys out there, because there are bad guys in the world, and that's just part of it. You know, you learn how to deal with it, and it's one of my favorite sayings comes from another member of DTA, Trajan. Is, hey, they're not hitting nothing but scar tissue at this point. Doesn't hurt me at all.
Yes, indeed. That is nice. I'll have to remember this one. Go ahead, Hope.
I just wanted to add to what Filthy was saying that while, yes, you do have to be prepared when you walk out of your house that you may be attacked and killed, the good thing is that it is just a game, and you know, you're there to have fun. They're just pixels, and it doesn't happen every time. You can most certainly go out and do whatever you're going to do and be unhindered, but that adds to the fun. I mean, if you go out every time and know that you're going to be safe and you're going to come back with all your stuff, you know, what's the use in that? It's much more fun to go out with a risk that you might lose something.
That is an interesting way of looking at things. Even though a lot of people that play production shards actually play it for that reason. They like knowing that they're going to go out there and do whatever, and they're going to come back with their stuff. Some people actually don't like that risk of maybe losing things. I don't know. I kind of have mixed feelings about that. I would like to think that, when things are too safe, it gets boring after a while, but I guess it's just a different way of looking at things. Yes, Kira?
Well, we try to reduce the risk, of course, so we carry as little as necessary. We don't carry unnecessary things, and we all know a very fast way to run from our houses to the...
I'm sorry, I think you cut off a little bit at the end of it. Could you repeat what you were saying?
I said that we try to carry as little stuff as necessary. We only carry the most necessary stuff, and we all know a way from our house to the bank, a very quick way, and we know exactly which bushes will bounce us back.
Yeah, well, knowing shortcuts will save your life more than once, I'm sure. Go ahead, Pyra.
Well, I can just add to that by saying that when you're on Siege, you have to learn to play smart. Pick your right times to do certain things that might be high risk, such as doing a harrower. After we go through all the effort to try to get 12 to 15 people together to do a harrower, we try to do it as safely as we can so we're not raided. I will say some of the times we've been raided have been some of the most memorable and fun times I've had. But also, if we really want to try to get guild members those 25 scrolls, we want to and want to succeed, we get up early in the morning. We've often all gotten up at 3 a.m. to do a harrower on a weekday, so we can do it safely and quickly. The last one we did, we got 2 of them done in an hour and a half.
It's not so bad. I remember those days when we used to do Harry's at the wee hours of the morning. I'm too old for this now, but it was indeed interesting, and I have to agree with you. Getting those, getting harrowers rated can be so much fun. Like, you get some of these epic battles, and win or lose, it's actually better when you actually win. But win or lose, usually you come home and you're like, darn, that was fun, and you're almost tempted to summon another one just for the heck of getting that adrenaline rush again. But how do you feel about the whole Actually, no, wait a second. I had a question here that had been posted in IRC. Yes, it was about Heartwood. Is it true that I believe that for a while you guys, the Reds, did not have access to Heartwood for a while. Is this still the case? And if it is, how do you guys feel about that, the fact that Reds cannot enter Heartwood? Yes, Sophie.
That lasted for, what was it, about 2 weeks, I believe, and then they were allowed in, but it's like a guarded protection. All our cities do have guard zone, except Buccaneer's Den. And Heartwood is the same way. They can come in and they can do the quest now as well.
Awesome. Yes, Kara.
Actually, all the Blues and all players on Siege together asked that they would be let in because we don't want that much difference between the red and the blue.
I agree, especially if you're going to be Felucca only rule set shard, then there's really no reason why red should not be allowed absolutely everywhere. Should I let Viceroy talk, or should I continue to abuse him? I'll be nice. Go ahead, Viceroy.
Yes, I'm actually kind of curious as to whether, because I'm, understand that Siege has a lot of red players on it, and I'm kind of curious as to whether or not your guild was affected by this, this change to Heartwood, and I'm not really sure. I might have missed out on this part, but did you guys say this is still the case for Heartwood, or has that since been changed? And do you have any reds in your guild, in other words? Okay, go ahead, Pelty.
The Reds are allowed in Heartwood now, and they're allowed in all the towns. Heartwood is just like any other town with the guards. And we appreciate that they're allowed to come wherever. And I forgot the rest of the question. Oops.
Sure. The second part of my question was, does your guild have any red players in it which might have been affected by this recent change?
Right. Our guild is usually strictly blue, but we do occasionally get a red. Like I may go red defending a harrower because we have on Siege we have what we call purples. They're red plus blue equals purple. And they're the blue characters that they use when we're using fields to protect our harrower or whatever. Well, their blue characters aren't affected by the EVs in the field, so they get their blues and we have to kill them. And so we do go red from time to time, but we try to keep our counts really low. And we don't actually allow reds into the guild, but if you turn red defending a guild function, that's all right.
All right, and I do appreciate you guys answering that question. So go ahead, Sakura, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Now, as a Siege player, how do you guys feel about the no insurance? I know that this is something that I've seen come up quite a few times on Stratix. And, I look at the production shards and the thieves are like ranting 24/7 about it, by how it totally destroyed their play style. The fact that insurance is basically depriving them of stealing anything worth stealing. So how do you guys feel about insurance? Or rather, the lack of insurance on Siege? Yes, Filthy.
When they came out with the item insurance on other shards, I was glad they didn't have it here on Siege. But then they give us the, I forget what it was. It was a promotional item, the personal blessed deed. So the veterans that have been on Siege for a long time have a personal blessed deed. So we have one item insurance, basically. And then new players that come to Siege don't have a personal blessed deed, so they're at a severe disadvantage. And it's been a discussion on and off the boards for a long time. What should be done, because personal blessed deed was a promotional item. Can they take them away so nobody has them? Then you have some people that have your personal blessed deed and they have an item blessed deed on, say, the ornament of the magician, and a clothing blessed deed on the hat of the magi, plus they have the personal blessed deed on something else, so they're totally overpowering. And so basically as far as me talking to everybody and everything, from what I gather from it, we'd like them to make the personal blessed deeds inactive and go to a one-item insurance, so you can carry one of these items or whatever, and but make the one-item insurance for everybody on Siege.
So basically you take away that one person having a personal blast deed and make it so everybody gets one item that they can insure at their own choice. But then how would you, what about, things such as clothing blast deeds? Because after all, even if you do have the, you use that one item, item blast deed or whatever, the one that, would be for everybody, somebody could still have a lot of artifact armor or whatnot that are all insured through the clothing blast deed. Would you want to see clothing blast deeds also removed, or
No. Sorry. But
no, go ahead.
The clothing blessed deeds are fine, but they should not be allowed to be used on artifact quality items. On something regular, normal loot off of a monster, sure. But on a Hat of the Magi or the Tunic of Fire or something along that lines, you make the list just like put the Hat of the Magi on the same script list as say you try to use a item insurance on an item container. It just won't let you do it.
But why though? I mean, after all, if this is like a clothing blast deed, it's not something that other people couldn't use. I mean, like the personal blast deed works on absolutely anything. You can put it on your ornament. You can put it on, the Hat of Magi, on a weapon. You can put it on absolutely anything. But the clothing blast deed only works on clothes or fabric-made items. And so even if I do have one, nothing prevents you from having one on your own. So why would there be a difference there? I mean, I personally wouldn't really bother in putting clothing blast deed on a pretty apron, except the Crimson Censure, but I think that's blessed by default, I think. I may be wrong, but there would be no real purpose for the clothing blast deed, in my opinion, if you can bless artifacts. Do you want to answer that, Filthy, or do I move on to Pirate?
Oh, I can. The clothing blessed deeds are still very, of course, if you don't have something blessed on Siege or insured, you're probably going to lose it eventually, within a couple weeks anyhow. But there's still like the Mana Regen 2 hats with 45, 50 resist that you get off of loot monsters that are great with the clothing blessed deeds. Things like that are fine. It's just the artifact quality, the artifact 10 and 11 quality is what I really don't think they make. If one character has too many of them, that character seems to get overpowering. Which, yes, I do have the choice to go out and I can go down and spend 80 hours down in Doom and do it too, I guess. But the way Siege goes, you can't really spend 80 hours down in Doom.
Okay. All right, Pyrite. Go ahead.
Well, addressing the personal blessed deed issue, I think that most of Siege, over the years, this has been a problem since AOS. Agree that we would like to have one item that is blessed or insured freely for each and every player so that we can enjoy some of the better artifact quality items and bless them and keep them. Just one for each person. The whole issue of the clothing blessed deed was kind of a surprise to a lot of us. We hadn't even thought of it as a problem until I believe it was Mr. Tack that threw that out at us last year as a possibility to lose those. So it kind of started another controversy, and I'm really not sure at this point how it's going to end up. But it doesn't affect myself personally. I can do with it or without it.
Yes, Kira, go ahead.
Well, another aspect of the clothing blast deeds, of course, is that they are easier for us to obtain because we are the people who do the BOD.
Yes, obviously as crafters you do get them pretty easily. So versus the other more hunter types, it might be a lot more difficult for them to come by them. But yeah, I kind of have mixed feelings about this. I can definitely see how it makes things a little unfair that some people would have the personal blessed deeds. I'm more mixed about the whole clothing blessed deed, because to me, as long as the possibility is there for everybody to be able to get that equal thing going, as long as the possibility is there, then I personally don't have a problem with it. Because to me, in a way, it's pretty much the same debate as people that the casual player versus the total junkie that plays 24/7. Should the junkie be basically punished because the casual player doesn't have as much time to put in game? I don't think so. As long as the possibility was offered to them, if they could make the time, or if they could get the funds to actually acquire them by buying them in gold instead of actually going out and hunting them. But that's just my views on this. Yes, Kira.
I think most of us agree with you there. I think most Siege players want to see effort rewarded. So I think that many people will want to see that people who play a lot and do a lot of work can get nice things for that. Another thing which got mixed in the clothing blast deed is that if all things with properties are denied the clothing blast deed, then we will end up with only one hat that is still blessed, and that's the bunny ears. So we are, from a fashion viewpoint, a bit concerned about everybody having to wear the bunny ears, and for that reason, many of us think that the clothing blast deed on hats is not a bad.
Oh yeah, I hear you on that one. That bunny ear is not exactly sexy, and there was a big debate on Stratix about that, giving crafters the ability to change the look of existing items, because this bunny ears, it's like, nah, not exactly. I mean, it's cute if you have a samurai character, but otherwise it's like, I don't know. Yes, Pyrite, go ahead.
Well, I think one thing you have to consider that most of us on Siege would just like to see as few blessings available as possible, and most of us are even willing to give up those bunny ears and the samurai helms so that we can get rid of blessings. Of course, we'd like to have some kind of decent armor that we could make to replace those resists that we gain from having those items. But one of our big problems is we keep getting more and more blessed items added to our mix. The last expansion just threw in all these items that are owned by no one until you click on them, and then all of a sudden you've got a new blessed item. So we're getting farther and farther away from being able to balance things out like we'd like to do.
Well, I really never thought about that, because I play Atlantic, and so insurance, my goodness, people love killing me because I'm quite the ATM machine. I have like 20,000 insured things on me, and God, I can picture myself without insurance tomorrow morning. I would probably flip out. Yes, Filthy, go ahead.
All right, and along the lines of blessed items and clothing blessed deeds and everything else. Siege was based on, and the whole PvP and the no insurance and the no recall and all this. Siege is based on trying to create an even playing field. And that's where all these blessed items sort of throw it all out of the loop.
But, I have to ask this, and I think that's probably one of the things that people wonder about a lot, because, heck, I've been playing this game since day one, and yet I cannot remember how it felt like not having insurance. And especially, I do remember, freaking out every time I used to go out with my silver Vank katana and thinking, oh my God, if I die, the end of the world is upon us, because if I lose this, I will never ever get another one. And there were really very few items like this that you really did not want to lose. But now that the game is so item-based, and you look at things such as your ornament, a lot of people are really having a hard time, even on production shards, getting their hands on a ornament of the Magi. And the hat of the Magi is the same thing. It's really expensive. And oh my God, forget about the Inquisitor's resolution. If I had the Inquis on Siege, they would probably just be decoration in my house, because, especially if I don't have a personal blessed deed, because I would hate to lose this. So how, to what extent do people actually use high-end artifacts on Siege? Because of the fact that you can't insure it, and chances are the minute you die, it's going bye-bye, and there's never any safe place for you except in town. Yes, Pyra.
Well, I'll go back to the beginning of your last statement and say how strange having insurance is to me. The only time I had experience with insurance is when I went on beta, and I think I went down exploring some dungeons in new areas, and I kept coming back and re-equipping at the bank, and it took about the third time before somebody kind of laughed at me and said, do you need to know how to work insurance? Because I hadn't even thought about using it. I just was used to, hey, if you die, you lose your stuff if you can't get back to it. I also don't have a recall macro anymore. I'd lost that a long time ago, too. So I forget when I go onto beta or onto a production shard for some reason that I can recall. It's completely foreign. As far as how important that personal blessed deed is for an artifact quality item, it's real important. One of the hardest things I see happen when we do a successful guild hunt, or we come up with a very good item, I have a lot of members who won't even roll for a chance to get that item because they don't have a personal blessed deed and they can't carry it. And they keep hanging in here and keep hoping that someday they're going to be able to carry one of those items. And it just gets really discouraging for them.
Wow, that actually really sucks. And I never actually pictured that. Wow. But you're right. I probably, if I were in their shoes, I probably also wouldn't bother rolling for it, because what's the point? Knowing that the first time you go out, you will very likely lose it. I don't know. Like I said, it's been such a long time now since I haven't been without insurance, that I don't know how I could handle not having it anymore, especially now that I'm used to being, I'm all decked out in artifacts and whatnot. It's like, ooh, yes, Filthy, go ahead.
Right, and that's where the whole balance comes into, is you've got people, and there's, I could name names, but there's a couple of people running around on the shard that were here since the beginning that somehow decided back when the Cleanup Britannia days were around and you got item blessed deeds, saved them and never used them. And so we've got a couple of characters on Siege that are running around with a Ornament of the Magician blessed, and Inquisitor's Resolutions blessed, and are running around with the Hat of Magi also blessed. And But that's where the whole equality issue comes out, to where nobody else can run, or you can't run around like that on Siege. Nobody else can anyway. So these people are totally overpowering, and where's the balance? And that's what Siege is supposed to be, is a balanced game. It's not supposed to be the whoever has the most is the strongest type deal.
Yes, on that sense, I agree 5,000% with you. Clearly, if everybody does not have the possibility to have at least one item insured, then it shouldn't be right that some other people get to have 20,000 items insured. And you're right. I do remember back in the day, people used to have those item blessed deeds long before the personal blessed deeds came out, and I had my Silverbank katana, which was easily going for close to 10 mil. But then there was this one guy that had a Silverbank katana with the item blessed deed on it, and so there was just no way you could lose it, except if you were stupid enough to let it break by waiting too long to repair it. Or if you repaired it too often, and eventually it would break. But I remember that katana was priceless, and a few people had those item blessed deeds, and I remember when they would go to file, people was like, okay, that's BS, it's not right that they should have all these things that are insured, and on a shard like yours, it's even more true. And I do hope they fix this ASAP, or at least provide everybody with at least one type of item blessed deed, or personal blessed deed that should be created for every new character or every existing character. Go ahead, Kira.
Yes, indeed. That I think about everybody on Siege agrees that we should have a one item bless, or the personal bless deed that can't be lost anymore. You mentioned something else with the items that if you repair them too often or let them break. There's another thing which has had some strange effect for us crafters on Siege, and that's of course the powder of fortifying. This means that people's very overpowered weapons don't break ever anymore if they buy enough powder. While before we could make some money from repairing things or crafting things. Now, they just keep their things as long as they want.
Which is also quite true. This is so strange because we all have very mixed feelings about all of this. Whether they should go back to the days when you can only repair an item so many times before it eventually breaks. At some point you would have to put a weapon aside because it had been repaired so many times that it was just not repairable anymore, or that it's like you repaired it so often that it would only take, you would go out with it, and after just a few minutes of fighting with it, it was already very damaged. The more you repaired it, and the less, and the shorter its lifespan would be. And in a way, I agree. This should be back. It shouldn't be the way it is right now, where things can last forever and ever and ever. But at the same time, they introduce so many really high-end items that are hard to obtain. It's like, if you manage to get your hands on a pair of Inquis, do you really want them to break? Considering that one pair you got is probably the only one you will ever have. I don't know. But anyways, another question for you on a different topic is, how is economy on Siege Perilous? Do you find that you guys have a healthy, fairly stable economy, or is there something that could be done about it? Because actually, part of the another question I will ask you down the road, a lot of economies have been affected, especially by the whole X sharding. but you guys do not have egg sharding at all. And so how do you feel about the state of your current economy? Do you think that there's too much gold, not enough gold, or is it fairly balanced? Yes, Kira.
I think on Siege it's fairly balanced. One aspect of that is, of course, that there is no cross-sharding of gold. You can see it, for example. Well, I could see it. I have played Europa in the past, and there you could see prices of a small tower rising faster than a new player could earn money. So basically, a new player could never own a small tower even. While on Siege, well, the prices of houses are basically determined by the deeds because there's still housing space. The resources still are about the same price as when I started. I started playing, and then bandages would sell for about 4 gold pieces, and now they will sell for around 6 to 7 gold pieces. So we do have some inflation, but not as much as other shards, I think.
Alrighty, but you are mentioning the price of the deeds. I had almost forgotten about buying house deeds because, you know, with the new house placement tool and whatnot. And I seem to recall that the price of everything on Siege is 2 or 3 times higher than regular production shards. But you can correct me if I'm wrong on this one. Yes, Filthy, go ahead.
The price of regs is depending where you get them from. There's faction towns, and the faction treasurer sets the price on them, and they can actually set the prices fairly low. Then when they're low, you stock up. I think any mage probably has 20,000 each reg as soon as the prices go down. So it's not that bad, but we're actually a older shard. There's a lot of you know, late 20s to early 50s playing on this shard. So I farm a lot, and I'm fairly rich already, so I don't need gold. But back in the day, if I needed gold, I'd go to eBay and buy it, just like anybody else. You know, it's just quicker and easier. I got a job, I got money, I don't care.
Alrighty, Hope, go ahead.
I was just going to add my little comedy relief here that I spend as much as I can possibly make at all times, so my economy is pretty good.
Yeah. Well, that's the way you're going about it. Well, then again, you don't need to pay for insurance, so it's not as much of an issue as us that need to have big fat bank accounts, especially with the whole ML. Oh my God. It's like, it's almost embarrassing, but since ML came out, I've paid over $3 million in insurance only. Mind you, I made a lot more, you know, from the items I gained, but I paid at least $3 million in insurance, if not more, just dying repeatedly to those one-hit kills, but whatever. Viceroy, go ahead.
Sure, you guys brought up a very interesting point there, you know, especially Filthy and everything. You mentioned factions and everything, and basically how you could manipulate the economy with factions and stuff like that. And now I'm kind of curious as to, you know, whenever you use that to your advantage and everything, and you can pretty much control the price rate on faction vendors, or should I guess that's what you're saying. Just exactly how well does that work for you? And do you think factions plays a bigger role on Siege Perilous than it does on production shards? And could it very well be like a guild that basically controls and manipulates these faction vendors, in which they can use to their advantage to basically, you know, let's say buy dirt cheap, then raise it up, jack up the price to where nobody else can get it outside their guild, and then use it to their advantage for the purposes of, you know, having a monopoly on some aspects of the game, so to speak? I want to hear what your thoughts on that are. Go ahead, Filthy.
Factions historically on Siege have basically been used since they actually fixed the problem with the monster ignore recently. A a lot of people don't do factions except for farming reasons now, because the monster ignore doesn't protect them against pets here on Siege. But yes, the factions, they can, and it has been done where the faction vendor price was, you're spending 90 gold for a garlic. And this and that, and they try to run the other faction. In the past, they've tried to run the other faction out of rigs or whatever. But for the most part, it's always been used as a PK tool or a farming tool more than a battle thing on Siege.
Okay, and let me follow up with another question. Would you say would it be safe to say that there's actually economic warfare in terms of factions? And in your opinion, does factions play a bigger role on Siege Perilous than it does on production shards? Because right now, to my knowledge, on production shards, factions is pretty much dead. So I'm kind of wondering, what's the difference between factions on Siege Perilous in terms of, if there is indeed economic warfare, is that what makes it pretty much different from production shards? Because of the simple fact there is no trammel or anything else, and therefore there's no getting away from, this monopoly control or anything like that? Filthy?
Right. There's we were there for a while. The factions were real big, and there were big faction wars in the towns and whatnot. And a lot of the hardcore PvPers do the factions just so they have people to fight all the time, in town or not. But as far as controlling towns and the faction economy and all that, I really don't think that Siege has ever really cared about any of that. I think it was more just another way to fight. I'll let Pyrite finish up on that, but to me, I think the faction benefits were more used as a PK tool, and now that that's been taken away, that they're really just don't care one way or another.
All right, and so I'm going to turn it over to Pirate now, and if you could maybe elaborate on how and educate some of us who do not play on Siege Perilous as to how it might be used as a PK tool, because you guys keep saying PK tool and stuff, but that doesn't mean anything to me because I don't understand what it means. Go ahead, Pirate.
Okay, for a long time, ever since they brought factions to Siege, those in factions could always earn monster ignore, and then they could come in and raid our spawns, and if we're doing a spawn, they could come in and ignore our pets. We couldn't fight back. This was used for a long time by a lot of PK guilds. We'd be doing a spawn, and they would bring their reds in to kill us, and then bring their blue tamers in to take over the spawn. Also, we had, if you go fighting PKs that are in a faction, they would have faction armor on. So if they lose, they didn't lose their armor. Even though if we're not factions, we would lose anything if we got killed. So here about, I think 6 months ago or something, they stopped that. Now, the bad thing is that we argued that we would like to see these faction blessings not work against non-faction people, but what they did is they took them away from everybody on the faction. So the faction blessings, people can't make faction armor anymore, even if you're fighting faction in faction. So it kind of put a stop to factions for a little while, although I notice on our boards right now there are some people trying to get factions going again. So I hope that they get to, because it gives them a steady stream of opponents to fight each other.
Okay, and so are you guys basically implying there is no economic warfare or any motivation economically to basically get into factions, and maybe a huge guild, maybe whether it be your guild or some other huge guild like yours or anything like that, there's absolutely no motivation there to basically have a monopoly with regards to factions and stuff like that? no guild take advantage of that? I mean, where there's that possibility to have a monopoly? Is that what y'all basically tell me? Because I'm not too clear on that. Go ahead, Kira.
Well, the effect of an economical war would be rather restricted because there are some towns which are not controlled by factions, and there the cost of regs would simply be 3 times the cost of normal shards. So we could always buy at that price, even if faction vendors don't sell regs any cheaper than that.
Okay, so, okay, well, if we were to say, let's say I was in factions on Siege Perilous and I was to actually reduce it by 50% for myself, would that not be like, a way to basically profit from, the spoils of war? Basically if you control a town or your faction controls a town and you had the finance minister reduce the faction prices on the vendors there by 50%, would that not be in essence lower or cheaper than the non-controlled faction towns? And I'll follow up with another question. Would you like to see more towns that are not faction oriented become faction oriented?
I think, yeah, the faction benefit the economics. What happens is it's just like if a faction controlled a town now, and they were going to raise the prices or lower the prices or whatever. What if they lowered the prices? Of course, I'd go stock up, make sure I was over 20,000 of each reg and had plenty of bottles and whatnot. But if they raised the prices, I guess I'll see how long they can hold prices because I got a big stockpile, and it's how most people do play on Siege is when their prices are low, stockpile just in case they raise them. And if they raise them higher than the other town, I'll just go get them at the other town. But I would like to see more faction action. I mean, it made life more interesting to be able to sit there and watch. I've never been in factions except for a short period of time where I used it to go down to Doom and farm the Dark Father down there so that all the extra spawn didn't come after me. But after they fixed that, there was no need for me to be in factions.
Yeah.
But the monster ignore was a big problem because you'd have 4, you have 4 PKs come in with monster ignore on a group of 9 tamers. Now the 9 tamers have 360 skill points tied up in taming, and their pets are useless, so they're basically come in and they're fighting people with 360 skill points of nothing. Noobs basically. And you can have 9 people in there doing a spawn, and the faction people come in there and kill them. So I think when they fixed the faction problem, they actually went overboard because they should have just whenever a faction guy attacks a non-faction guy, the faction crap don't work.
Okay. And so, I'm not sure if I got an answer on this particular question, but would you like to see more towns included in factions? For example, there may be like a town like a Cove, for example, they are not actually faction controlled or anything like that. And I'm not sure what other towns are not faction controlled, but would you like to see those in towns included, like New Jellum and stuff like that? Go ahead, Phil.
With the population on Siege, we're probably 10 times less population than on the other shards. I mean, if you want to go place a large tower, you can walk around and find a place to put one. And just use your placement tool and place it. So if more faction towns, we'd spread it out even more. So there's probably a give and take there, that there's probably not enough faction action to go around right now, let alone put more towns into it.
All right, yeah, that seems like a fair response. I think Sakara wanted to tackle the faction question or issues a little bit more, and the reason I jumped on that so quick because factions, in a way, to me, ties in with the economy because it does have an impact on the economy, and with Siege Perilous being one facet only, I'm sure it has a more impact on the economy on Siege Perilous, so I just had to jump on that one. So with that said, I'm going to turn it back over to Sakara. Sorry about that.
Well, you pretty much covered factions, so I'm not really gonna go over it all that much more now. But I will ask, what would you like to see done to bring back factions? And I guess for you guys that are more crafters, does it affect you really? Because a lot of people on the production shards have been talking about a way to revitalize factions would be by allowing factions to also control the Trammel rule set towns. And a lot of people are saying, no, we don't want that because it's going to affect the PVMers, it's going to affect the crafters and whatnot, because in essence, you guys can control, factions can control the price of everything, including leather, boards, ingots, and, so on and so forth. And the crafters are like, oh my God, we definitely do not want to start seeing that happening, because if they start having control over towns, Trammel towns and whatnot, they will be forcing us to get involved in the whole faction things if we want to have our say in how things are being priced. So how do you feel about that? Yes, Pirate, go ahead.
Well, first of all, we don't have resources on faction vendors. All we have is regs and bottles. So all that the faction pricing affects us is buying our reagents in bottles. We can get a good deal on those if there's a low-priced faction town. How does having more active and stronger factions affect my guild personally? I like it when the factions are very active, because they fight each other and leave us alone.
That is indeed a way of looking at it. But we also, faction vendors on production shards do not sell leather either, but they do sell boards, and they sell, oh my God, iron ore. And so, which is a pain now because you can no longer gate the way we used to. You can no longer gate like insane amounts. That's what we used to do when the vendors were out in the boonies. You would get like 50 or 60K iron ore and just like transfer it in one gate, with a macro into your bank. So that was actually sweet. You can't do that anymore. But anyways, but still, you could set the price of items in town. And so when you go to the fur trader in town, the prices are being set by the factions. And, there is a huge difference. I know personally when I need bulk leather, I actually go around looking for, faction towns so I can get them for cheaper. Or at least I used to. I don't really bother getting them myself anymore. I have people that get them for me. But, this is one thing that people were concerned about. If faction towns start setting insane prices in town, then a lot of people will no longer be buying from NPCs in town because the taxes are just way too high. Yes, Filthy.
And that's basically what the economy on Siege is based on, is if its prices are too high in town, buy them from somebody, then you have to interact with the crafter. You have to interact with somebody that mines, or you have to interact with a lumberjack, or, a gatherer of leather. And you undercut the faction vendors. The crafter will undercut the faction price. So that sort of keeps the economy balanced in Siege, because I can always gather leather for pyrite, whether it's barbed, spined, or whatever. It doesn't matter. That's what I do for our crafters, because I'm a hunter. I can go out and gather, a couple thousand barbed hides, and I basically give it to pyrite and everybody else. But, it sort of keeps it there. What they really need to do to activate factions on Siege again, to get them active again, is fix their fix. They made it to where the factions weren't able to use it as a PK tool anymore, as far as they have blessed armor and we don't. The monster ignore keeps the tamers from, basically takes 360 skill points away from tamers. Well, I didn't care that it did that against faction members because factions are supposed to get benefits against their enemies. But us and DTA are not their enemy. We're just a guild. We're not in factions. Factions fight factions. So why do they get benefits against us? If they attacked us, a non-faction guild, their faction crap ought to be eliminated while they're fighting us, while they're deemed an aggressor, just like you're not allowed to go in a house.
Alrighty, Pirate, go ahead.
Well, I think Filthy covered a little bit of what I was going to say about the factions affecting our economy. It's just not that big of an issue, and just from what you said, going to an NPC to buy leather, I don't know that I've ever even considered buying leather from an NPC vendor. You got to realize the normal price here would be 3 times whatever they are on production shards. That would have been too expensive to start out with. When I started Siege, we were buying ore at a half a gold piece per ingot, actually, when we first started. That's what the economy started as. Now it's grown a lot, but you buy from each other. You don't go to the NPCs. I think the only thing I buy from an NPC is dyes for the dye tubs. Everything else I get from other people. And I guess that's what makes our shard maybe a lot more unique, is that we count on each other. We learn to know where to shop, and we make friends so that we know how to trade with each other.
One thing, though, I have to comment is you guys are talking such smaller amounts compared to what I see on a shard such as Atlantic. I can't really speak for other shards, but I have a feeling it's pretty much the same thing. Because Filthy was mentioning 1 or 2K, of whatever leather. We're talking on average 10K, 20K deeds and whatnot. People literally farm the NPC vendors. We're not talking small amounts. And so I don't know if it's really comparable in that sense. Hope, go ahead.
One thing I wanted to mention was that, remember, we cannot sell back to the vendors. I mean, so a lot of new people come on, and that's how they start making their money, is by start farming leather, start farming ingots. And so our economy is sometimes based on being able to buy from the new players. Also, with a guild as large as ours, then even our people that don't farm resources are friends with somebody that does farm resources, and so it's kind of like if I scratch your back, you scratch my back, and you help each other out that way. That's a big part about what DTA is all about, and that's why it's so good to be in.
Well, that is great to hear. Kira, go ahead.
Well, I was wondering whether the rules have changed, because I thought that NPCs on Siege don't sell resources at all. You can't buy boards, you can't buy leather or ingots or anything. And another thing is, I think that the people who on the production or on the regular shards who buy these large amounts of leather mainly need the leather to train, for example, tailoring from 70 or 80 upwards. While that on Siege is ruled by the rate over time, and you don't need the astronomical figures of leather you need on production shards.
True, but you actually mentioned something that I had forgotten about. I had totally forgotten. I do remember hearing that you guys could not buy resources other than reagents from NPCs, and I think you're right. And that, actually, I got to say, it is a good thing. It does create a better market for resource gatherers. I'm sure that a lot of people are probably cussing me out right now for saying that I think it's a good idea, because they would hate to see this, that they would hate to see this on production shards, but it is a good thing not being able to buy mass amount of resources, because right now on production shards you can basically buy nonstop from NPCs. The prices do go up, but you always have 500 of everything, and every time you buy 1K of something, so 2 times 500, the price ends up going by 1, so you could end up paying like 100 gold pieces per boards, but you can go on buying and buying and buying and buying. So I do believe that is a huge difference with you guys. Yes, Filthy, go ahead.
Right, and then going on what they said is hey, as a resource gatherer, which I'm not a resource gatherer. I'm a hunter. I kill dragons. I kill blood elves. I kill all that stuff. I go out and, I'm so rich, I don't need the resources just from the farm. I take the gold, and because my guildmates are my guildmates, I go ahead and skin the dragons, and we give that to a crafter. And in turn, that crafter, if I need leather, I can say, hey, Pi, can I get 6, 7 sets of armor? I'm out. And I get armor. It's not, it's a trading barter system, what we have going on. And I think it works pretty well compared to going out and just, because I have 7 characters or 6 characters, I can just log on my crafter and do my thing on my own. I actually have to ask somebody to do it for me. But it's a favor return for a favor given.
Which is the way it should definitely be. But now, moving on away from this topic, the next question will be about X-sharding. I know quite a few people, when they first heard about X-shards starting, they were talking about, X-sharding to Siege Perilous, and then found out that it's not going to be happening, that there will be no X-sharding to or from Siege Perilous. Were you guys happy about this? And how do you feel about, I can understand the no X-sharding to Siege Perilous, because that definitely would wreck your economy and whatnot. But how about the no X-sharding from Siege Perilous? Would you like to be able to take one of your characters currently on Siege and bring him somewhere else if you decided, that's it, I no longer want to play Siege? Yes, Kira.
Well, one aspect is, of course, that we don't want to go anywhere else. We want to stay on Siege, of course. Another aspect is it wouldn't be fair to you, because say I could train a character on Siege for really a fraction of the amount of resources it takes on a regular shard, and then cross-shard that character to Atlantic. That would just not be fair.
Yes, but then again, you guys have it a lot harder, and in a few minutes we will be talking about the ROT system. Training is really quite different on Siege than it is on production shards, and it is easy for me. If I were to try to start a new mage today, I could have him multiple times GMs by tomorrow same time, which is not the case on Siege. And so I think this should be taken into consideration, and whereas you guys work so much harder to get to where you want to be, if you bring your character to my shard, well, big boop-a-doo, it makes no difference to me. Whereas if I come in with my uber decked out character with, all 120'd out and arty'd out because it was so easy to get on my shard, it would make a big difference to you guys. Pirate, go ahead.
Well, Quirrell was right that it would be different because of our ROT, and it would take less resources to build a character, especially something like smithing. But we like ROT a whole lot. I think it's easier than what you probably have now, as once you get used to it, the timing aspect of it. And it's really easy and pretty much guaranteed how and when you're going to game, and you can predict it. And just depending on how often each day you can log on to get a point, it determines how fast you're going to get to 100 or 120. But to cross-shard, for people to come here would be problems. we don't want already developed characters here. We'd like people to start out new and experience getting to know each other as newbies. I think there's a big value to that, and it makes us unique, and I'd like to keep it that way. The other aspect of us leaving Siege to go someplace else is that we do have some unique items on this shard. I'd hate to see them leave Siege and go to other shards.
Alrighty, Filthy, go ahead.
And that's along the lines of the cross-trade thing. It's because it does take you, well, it's actually a lot easier training your character here on Siege. It takes a lot longer. And during that time, you're required to build friendships and because you're weak, basically, and you're running around with a bunch of heathens and stuff. You know, so you have to you have to rely on others and build your character, and you take ownership in your character, and you actually care about your character. It's not like, oh, so Filthy got killed, I can get Scummy out and go take care of dude. No, if Filthy's dead, I need to take care of Filthy. So I seem to, you care more about your character than you would on another shard, is the way I take it.
I also have to agree with this. I do think I would still like to be able to egg shard from Siege, but at the same time I agree if there are no there are no egg sharding to and from, then if there are no egg sharding to Siege, then there probably shouldn't be any egg sharding from. I have a question here for you, which is how do you guys feel about LRC suits on Siege Perilous? Do you think that should be removed, or then again they are talking about nerfing LRC on every shard, so I have a feeling Siege will not be spared either. Yes, Kira.
I think on Siege they have a great role to fill. The main reason being that you can't insure them, so you can perhaps bless one item with your personal bless deed, but the rest can be stolen. So you go out with one, you get killed, you lose it.
Quite true. And yeah, you're all right. I keep forgetting you guys do not have insurance. God, I don't know if I could survive without insurance anymore. Go ahead, Filthy.
And that's exactly the point I wanted to make. If you say you go out and do a Chief Proximus, where you have to have somebody casting, Arch Cure over and over and over again, so you have your mage standing there being safe, casting Arch Cure over and over and over again, but then at the same time that mage is taking the risk of losing that 100% lower reg cost suit. And so we've got it, and we can lose it too.
You're right. Oh my goodness. Then again, they are talking about, if they do end up nerfing LRC, they are talking about having something pretty similar to the quivers. And actually, talking about quivers, how does that even work on Siege? Then again, I do believe the one that comes from the 8th anniversary is insurable. Well, not insurable, it's blessed, if I'm not mistaken. But, the whole point of having the quivers is that you wouldn't lose your arrows once you die. Basically having a way of insuring your arrows. But you guys don't have insurance, so how does it work on Siege? Yes, Hope.
Well, I just want to say that the quiver from the 8th age is not blessed on Siege. So basically, when you die with any quivers, they're, lootable.
So there's really no purpose in having a quiver on Siege.
Well, it makes your arrows a little bit lighter, and it's a little handy to hold them, and I guess it looks kind of cool.
Okay. And yeah, I do believe some of the quivers also give you certain bonuses. I think it's dexterity or something like that. So, yeah, I guess that would work in a way. Geez, it is such a different way of thinking about the game, though. Alrighty, so next question. Let me look at my questions here real quick. Okay, now about PVMing. how do you feel about the current state of PVMing? Because we talked we talked a bit about faction. We really didn't talk much about PvPing. We're going to have to cover that in a moment. But how do you feel about the state of PVMing right now? Because we did ask for a while the dev teams to make it a bit more challenging. And, really to me, the way they addressed that was by, what they called upped AI is really just making the monsters gankers. They just removed any faster cast requirements for them. They just cast nonstop at speed of light. They cast a lot of disruptive spells, and basically gank. They just come after you with a vengeance 24/7. So do you find it more, that this new AI made hunting more interesting and challenging, or you find it more aggravating? And do you actually feel that there is certain classes being disadvantaged by the way they have turned PVMing, or rather the way they have changed the AI? Yes, Filthy, go ahead.
Well, a lot of it comes in when they created the new monsters and everything to create, and it's from reading the boards and stuff, but they created a lot of new monsters like the Paragons and Ishnar to force people to fight them together, to group activity. And the same with the the Doom, the Dark Father, stuff like that. But all these monsters are located in Tremel on the other shards. Okay, Ishnar isn't in Felucca. Doom is not in Felucca. So not only, we already had to fight in a group to fight these monsters anyhow because we had to protect ourselves from the PKs, or, we were big into fighting in groups anyway for that aspect. It just made it harder, basically, and we had to learn how to overcome it.
Alrighty, but I was actually thinking, like for instance, in your case, for sure, there's no real choice. You do have to be in groups. I remember the early days when I used to go to Khaldun, and you could not go to Khaldun alone because there were always a group of Reds that were raiding it constantly, especially back then where silver weapons were so sought after and so valuable, and going there alone was pretty much guaranteeing you were going to die. So I do remember those days where you had to have someone with you whenever you would go hunting, especially in certain areas. But the new AI has made quite a few changes, and actually this is going to lead into probably a bit of the PvP aspect and the various classes. But I'm looking at, for instance, the mages. I personally think the mages are at a great disadvantage with the new monster AI because absolutely everything disrupts them. And the new creatures, especially the spellcasters, will cast one magic arrow after the other, non-stop, with absolutely no delay in between. And so you just can't cast in between unless there's somebody to either piece them or provoke them onto something else or whatever. So basically, you're pretty much sitting duck. The only other templates that can survive or tamers or dexers because they don't get disrupted, and as far as I know, archers also do not get disrupted if they fire while if they're trying to fire while somebody is hitting on them. So
you can't carry protection on yourself. Just
you could, but
I mean, we're already resistance. We know that, but
not only that, it kills your faster cast. I mean, we're already stuck at 2.6. Then when you have protection on, I think it drops you to 0 or to
right.
Or it drops.
If you're a mage on Siege, that's what you run with protection. That's all there is to it. You don't have to.
Oh, really?
That's how you do.
I had no idea. Well, I cannot see myself.
That's how you have. You'll learn. You try it. It works.
Wow, that is a new way of looking at it. personally, I mostly hunt with my bard because at least I can piece, and that gives me half a chance to heal or cure in between the massive gank. But I'll have to try that again. But zero casting, oh my goodness. Yes, Pyrite, go ahead.
Well, you just hit on what I was going to say. I changed from fighting monsters with a mage to a bard. I just finished up a bard when the expansion hit, so I'm really enjoying the new opportunity and the new things to learn with her. And all this new stuff is a lot of fun as far as learning to do it as a group. We get a few brave souls that go out and check everything out and try to come up with a good plan of how we can manage it as a group, who can do what, and how to survive. And it's a matter of teamwork, and that's what's fun.
Yes, I have to agree that the whole ML expansion has really brought back some of that group activity. For me, it hasn't really made that big of a difference because I ran a champ spawn guild, so we're already used to doing things as a group. But I think it has brought quite a few guilds together and created new guilds as well for people that wanted to go out and experiment with this. So that was definitely a good thing. Go ahead, Hope.
I was just going to add that I think it makes it a little more interesting when you have to learn new ways to play the game. You know, the monsters are different than anything that we've seen before, and it takes skill to figure out how you're going to kill them. You know, sometimes you run out of time and you go, oh, well, I just wasted 3 hours of my night, but I learned a lot, and next time, you know, we'll be more successful at it. I think it's always more enjoyable when, you know, you have a little bit of a challenge and you're successful at it. It's more rewarding that way.
Absolutely. And the problem is that once you have figured it out, it kind of becomes routine. I'm looking at a few of the bosses now, the Peerless bosses, and I'm already like, okay, this is easy. Been there, done that. You know, where's the new challenge? But oh well, it was still fun while it lasted. Yes, Pirate, go ahead.
Well, at that point, when we get to that point, that's when we maybe try to introduce some newer members that don't have the same skills as the last ones that joined us, bring some different people in, and try it a different way and see what you can do. And it can bring a whole new challenge then.
Indeed. Yes, Kira.
Yes, indeed. And another way is to not keep your hunt secret enough. In that way, some of the larger red guilds will flow in and make it even more exciting.
You know, that is so strange to hear someone actually say that. You know, usually what you hear is like, oh my god, the reds are coming. Oh my god, you know, they just ruined my day. And, you know, to actually hear someone say, well, you know, we have some red guilds coming in, and makes it more exciting. That's the spirit. Definitely a big difference in mentalities here. Filthy, go ahead.
Right, and what Quira said was it's like it's challenging enough to go in and you go in with 6 or 7 people and you kill Proximus, for example. You go in and you have to kill the corrosive slimes, you know, and gather the things, and you got to go kill the putrefier, whatever his name was, that big old green ugly thing, and you got to go kill him, and he's hard enough, and you're in there killing him, and 3 or 4 reds come in on you, so you got to fight them off while the putrefier's chasing you around. Then you got to go back to kill him. And, I mean, it gets pretty fun, you know. And maybe that's a different aspect of, we never know when we're going to get raided, and that's what the whole siege thing, you know, is different than the other shards, because it's hard enough on its own, but you're sitting there running an aspect of, okay, we have to have a couple people ready to fight some reds off in the middle of all this on a normal basis.
Yes, that's basically the main difference, I guess, with Siege and every other production shard, that you always have to be ready. And I don't really think that any guild on your shard can be solely Crafter's Guild or, you know, solely Merchant Guild or solely whatever, as we have here on Atlantic. You have certain guilds if you look at the roster and at the skill, the overall skills of that specific guild, you will not find a single combat skill like at all in the entire guild. I don't think they would survive too long on Siege. Go ahead, Hope.
I was just going to say that you've seen people get bored enough that they will make a shard-wide announcement or an announcement on Stratix that they're going to go do a harrower, and so then you have the whole shard showing up to a harrower and have a great big fight and then see who comes out victorious.
Yes, those are fun. We actually do that once every blue moon. That doesn't happen too often. Most of the time people, we already know we're going to get raided. Or that there's a good chance that it will get raided. But I have to say, last night we did do a harry, and while we were gathering to go to the harrower, some of our reds were going like, should we announce this or not? And we're like, and you had half the people going like, no, we just want to do this in peace, and others going like, yeah, but a fight would be fun, and blah, 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 But whatever. Geez, time is flying so fast. I better get moving on the other questions before we run out of time, because there's still quite a few things I would like to ask you guys. One of them is about newbie players. Should I ask the newbie players first? No, I'm going to ask about skill gains first. Could you guys explain to us how exactly the ROT works? Yes, Belty.
Okay, you can power up to 70 in all your skills. Boom. You can all your whatever your template's going to be, power everything up to 70 in a day. And then after that, any and all skills between 70 and 80, you can only gain 3.6 a day total. And then from 80 up until 120, any and all skills combined is 2.1 points a day. So it takes a while to build a character. It's not per skill, it's per all skills in them skill levels. 70 between 70 and 80, you can get a gain every 5 minutes. Between 80 and 100, you can get a gain every 10 minutes, and after 100, it's every 15 minutes. But you can do it on multiple skills at a time, so you can get all your gains quickly. What most people do is try to put all their rot gains into their most important skill right off the bat to gain that one important skill right off the bat. Because you can go from 70 to 100 if you do the math. It takes 3 days to go from 70 to 80. Then from 80 to 100 it takes you another 10 days in one skill.
Okay, so basically, if you're trying to get an old GM character, you would probably have to take about a month to get there, maybe a bit more. And to hit 120, it would be a little longer than that. So you really have to start planning ahead of time which skill you actually want to gain in, and just basically plan that all out properly, and just work it out, and eventually that's it. There's a few good sides to it. It kind of reminds me in a way of Power Hour back in the days, when you knew there was this 1 hour that you are devoting to training, and you can basically spend the rest of the time just doing whatever else.
Oh yeah, it's just really easy. Once you're over 70, say like you're trying to gain swords, you can park yourself in your house and have a healer outside or whatever, and just run outside and hit it, and run back inside, log off, wait your 10 minutes, go vacuum the floor, whatever, log back on, run back out there, hit something, you get your gain, go back, log out. It's that easy.
There's good sides to it, and at the same time, I'm like, I mean, I've always had a problem with the skill gains in UO. I think most of it is boring and repetitive. In this case, I think it's almost even worse, because it's like, am I really gaining? I mean, yeah, I'm getting the points, but yeah, I just went out and hit something and went back to my house, and it's like that's my training. I find it more to be more of a pain than an actual, real form of training. I don't know if you see what I mean.
Right, and I agree with you that it's not really training. What it's really doing is it's like the man's holding you down, so you have, because it takes a long time, to get your points. So it keeps you weak for an extended period of time, whether you're training or not. It's making you rely on other people and build that sense of community that Siege is based on.
And yeah, I totally agree with that. I just think it would be great if we could come up with a way where you can actually do training where it's meaningful and at the same time that it's not so, mind-numbing. I'm looking at things such as gaining virtues like compassion, and I'm assuming virtues work just the same on Siege as they do on production shards. And to me, it's really annoying that I have to wait 5 minutes between each escorts before I can get my 5 gains in compassion for the day. I just think it's kind of dumb, but that's the way it works, so you just put up with it. But whatever. Yes, Kira.
Well, in many fighting skills, of course, it's not all that bad because, well, you will be hitting things anyway on Siege, and it's just every 5 minutes you get a raise from it, you get a gain from it. Sorry, but it's not really that bad. You play the game, and meanwhile you gain the game, and meanwhile you gain sometimes.
Yes, that's probably the best way to actually just play the game and poof, your gain happens to occur while it's happening. But I know that a lot of people power game, and now knowing the way it works, I would probably do that. I do have a character on Siege Perilous, and that character is a total noob, and I'm so totally clueless, and I have no friends, so I'm not.
You got some friends, darling.
Thank you. But I don't know anyone on Siege, and I'm kind of a wuss at this point to really try anything out there. But now that you've explained how the ROT works, I can actually see myself just doing that. Going about gaining the lame way and just like log on, get that point, log out, and until I get to a decent level. And then I can go around and start owning everybody. Or at least die trying. Yeah, I'm going to let Hope respond to that, and then Viceroy has been waiting forever to ask a question. So go ahead, Hope.
Well, I was just going to tell you that now you know at least 4 people in Siege, and you're welcome to come up to any DTA member, and they will be happy to help you.
Woohoo! Thank you. Go ahead, Vice.
Yes, actually, I got a little comment to make and everything. I like the fact that the ROT system, pretty much like you guys mentioned earlier, pretty much, deters the power gamers from, just going over there and making a character within a week's time. Whereas, I think somebody here on IRC said pretty much it takes about 4 months to make a really good, solid character and everything, which is very good because, you don't have these people just going out and power gaming. That's pretty much all I wanted to say.
Yeah, and I have to agree with that, especially, we were talking extensively about it yesterday on the, during a talk show when we were talking about that guild that got massively banned and how most of them were basically saying, oh, it doesn't matter, in 2 days we will be right back up to 120, with 120 characters. And frankly, you can if you know how to train, if you know how to go about it. Especially if you start, using certain unnameable programs to do all the work for you while you're AFK, you can have on Production Shard a full 120 character, multiple 120 character in just a few days, 3-4 days tops. You can do it, and so I think that not only sucks, it's absolutely wrong. I know some people are cussing me out in real life right now for saying this, because it does suck. I remember in the early days when it took me about 4 or 5 months to GM my first Smith. And today, if you have the resources, and God knows it's easy to have like mass resources on Atlantic. Well, Draconi, you don't see them cussing me, swearing at me in IRC, but you should see my ICQ. They're about to lynch me. But anyways, yeah, I do remember those days, and today, you can do that now in just a few days. I don't know. Even myself, I've become lazy. I don't know that I would be able to put up with the pain that it used to be training. But it didn't seem that way back then because it was normal. We just become too lazy now. But go ahead, Kira.
Well, it sounds to me like you're really a Siege player. I mean, we have the exact same meaning about these things, and we love our characters. You won't see these many idiot names running around on Siege either. We love our characters, and we don't want to restart them.
Yeah, that's probably the hardest thing. I think when you worked your character so hard and it took so long, you actually have respect for your character, and you love the character that you've built because it took so much investment, not only in time and effort. And whereas today, you can make a character overnight, and I see people deleting characters left and right. I still have every single one of my original characters, and I have a hard time letting go of them because there is a love story there. They all have a history, and they took forever to build. And whereas today, most people, especially new players, they create a character 2-3 days later. These characters are multiple GMs, and they're like, you know what? I don't like him anymore. They just delete them and start a new one. It's just like going shopping for a new shirt. I like this one because it's trendy, and the fashion changes tomorrow, and you just toss it in the garbage and go buy a new one. And that's really kind of what it feels like nowadays. But anyways, enough ranting on my part. Question for the newbie players. Like myself, when I created my character on Siege, you get there, it looks very hostile, and you're like, geez, everything is so expensive, everything is just so hard. How does new player grow in I was going to say in Feluca, but no, I mean on Siege Perilous? How can you actually make it there and not just feel overwhelmed and just run for your life to a production shard? Yes, Pyrite, go ahead.
Well, the first advice I can give anybody is to join one of the 2 new groups. There's 2 guilds, each of them named New, that's all they do is they help new players. They're limited to a 30-day membership, and most PKs have agreed not to attack anyone with those guild tags on them. They form their own community where they help each other. They get set up to start making money by selling resources usually. And for the biggest part, most of the shard tries to support them, help supply them if they need any help, and try to buy their wares so that we're supporting new players on the shard.
Wow, that is absolutely awesome. I had kind of heard that there was, a guild out there to help new players, but I had no idea that even PKers had agreed to leave them alone. I think that is absolutely awesome because your shard is indeed a harder shard to raise a new character on, and I think it really is great that people have that understanding of basically not attacking the newborns, because that's really what a new player is on a new shard, basically a child, and it's nice that they're leaving the kids alone until they've grown mature enough that they're big enough to defend themselves. Yes, Kira.
Well, to be honest, not all will leave them alone. Most of the larger red guilds have agreed to either not kill them or not loot them, but they won't always leave them alone, and people should certainly not be discouraged if they are killed being new. But most blue guilds and most any guilds really will help them if they are dead and they need a rest. They will rest them. If they need to be re-equipped, they will help them re-equip and everything.
Well, that is really what is the most important, is that, a majority wolf sport. You can never get everyone to agree to something or to, actually work together towards something. But if the majority do leave them alone, that is a really good start right there. It's better than to have everybody just, chewing you up at every turn. And you are playing Siege, so there should always there should still be that element of risk. So I don't think it's a bad thing. They are starting in a harder environment, and they are learning right off the bat that, they have to be on guard at all times. Yes, Filthy, go ahead.
Right, and along the lines of the new guilds, we've, in the Red Sport in the new guilds, it's probably a year ago, or maybe even a little more than that, we actually had a couple of bad guys, thieves, whatever you want to call them, clean out, and there was proof that these people did clean out the new house and were griefing the new players. And it was pretty much, they're not on the shard anymore. They pretty much, every PK on the shard, every blue, they were just totally, anytime they were seen, they were dead and dry looted quickly. So they either changed the name of the character or something, but they're not here no more.
Well, I'm sure that nobody's shedding a tear over them. But we are really, really running out of time. My God, how time flies when you're in good company. But here is a question. Actually, Viceroy calls it his infamous question, but it's really not his infamous question in this case, because this is a question that I definitely wanted to ask you guys, and not exactly the way he would ask you, but it's rather, there have been a lot of talks and rallies and this and that regarding the asking the dev team to give us a pre-UOR shard. And, a lot of times when that subject comes up, people answer, well, there already is such a shard, and it's Siege Perilous, which actually is not accurate. Siege Perilous is an all-fel shard, well, all Felucca rule set shard, but it is not pre-UR in the sense that pre-UR does not have Trammel, does not have Ilshanar, none of the new lands, definitely has none of the item properties introduced by AOS and all that stuff. And so, how do you guys, what do you guys think of that difference between pre-UR shard and Siege Perilous? And is this something that you would like to see? I know that Pirate had mentioned earlier how AOS has affected, in a way, how crafting, crafters and merchants' lifestyle in a way with the new item properties. But, how do you feel about the two? And is this something, would you like to see Siege reverting to pre-UR? Or is this something that, you like the way your shard is going? And would you want to play a pre-UR shard if one was made available? Yes, Filthy.
I would, if it would go back to the days right before Blackthorn's Revenge, to where I could just throw on a set of GM armor and not have to worry about no rings and stuff like that. And I have a limited amount of time to play. I work. A lot of the people on Siege are older. We have responsibilities and whatnot. And, you have to buy 6 sets of armor and mix and match. We're not allowed to insure them to get a decent set of resist. You may have to spend an hour getting ready before you can go out fighting. If I could go back to the days where I could just grab some weapons and throw some armor on and go, I would love it myself, and I would leave Siege in a heartbeat for something like that.
Do I ever hear you on this one? Can I say amen? I really hate having to spend a ridiculous amount of time just trying to get a suit together. And I do remember those days when, you died in a dungeon and you could just run to the bank. You always had like a bunch of bags with GM armor already ready, so you only had to grab a bag, suit up, and go right back into the fight. And that was even better. Before you could just go out with no armor whatsoever, and that was even better. But yeah, spending a couple of hours or days trying to get a seat together just sucks. Yes, Kira, go ahead.
I still run out in GM armor, but well, I may die a little more than your average siege player.
Yeah, I would assume so, especially especially if you PVM. I don't know PvP if you have other players who like you go with only GM armor, but in PVM, anything that sneezes at you does insane damage. So yeah, I would assume that you probably die a lot more than the average player that has better resists on them. Yes, Pyrite, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that I wouldn't leave Siege for anything. I'm here for the long haul, I think, and we'll see it through. But boy, I'd sure like to see the armor change too, just the same reason that everyone else is mentioning, to make it easier to equip and get out there and go have a good time instead of worrying so much about all of your items.
But there are other things. I mean, for sure, this whole resistance and whatnot totally sucks. That you have to build a new, a full resist suit before you can go out and whatnot. But is there any other thing that you would end up losing? Let's say we were to revert to a pre-UR shard. There are a lot of things that we would lose. And do we really? Is this something that, for those of you that would consider going to a pre-UR shard, is this something that you would be okay with losing? I mean, there's a lot of the new stuff that they have introduced, like LRC, for instance, which I think is pretty cool. I think that's probably the one thing I would shed tears over, and I'm already starting to make my peace with losing most of it since they're talking about nerfing nerfing LRC. There's a lot of the new lands that have been introduced that did not exist in pre-UR, even though I think they could possibly keep them on a pre-UR shard, but just give them a new purpose and whatnot. So what are your thoughts on that? Yes, Pyrite, go ahead.
Well, that's just it. They've introduced so many new things over the years that are fun, and I think that we lose sight of that when we think of wanting to go back to the good old days sometimes. Something as simple as arcane gems. I love those. I don't wear an LRC suit very often just because of the risk of losing all that. But hey, I like to have my boots, and I get little things like that.
Yes, that's, I think, what a lot of people do not think about. There is a lot that has been introduced, and that we might end up losing. We would lose in such a shard. And there were other things too that kind of sucked back in the day, that people may forget about. And when we're talking about pre-UR, are we talking about back in the days when you needed a key to lock your door, and that if you lost that key, you lost your house and all of its content? Are we talking about a time when you couldn't lock down items inside your house? There's a lot of things that you have to think about that could be happening if they were to revert to this. The good old days always seem better than they truly were, but when you do go back in time, then you realize, maybe it wasn't all that after all. Yes, Kira, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I really want to be able to modify my house because that's what I love.
Oh yes, that is totally the bomb. That I have to say is awesome. Go ahead, Pyrite.
Well, I was just thinking in terms of even here on Siege, people sometimes want to get on the bandwagon to promote getting rid of all blessings on Siege, even the ability to our blessed rune books. And I remember not having blessed runes, and if you died and lost everything, you had to replace all your runes. I don't want to go back to that. That was just an annoyance.
Oh yeah. A lot of these little things, it's all these little things that make today better. but there's a lot of these new things too that makes us miss the old days. So it's really hard finding the middle ground that would make everybody just happier. All right, we're all out of time, and this sucks because I had a couple more questions for you guys. So I guess we're just going to have to invite you over again so we can talk about Siege Perilous more, because you guys were really great. But we're going to have to wrap it up because we are already eating up on the time of our following show. So I'm going to give every one of you, actually before I give you all a chance to say a little something, I'm going to invite Pyrite to maybe tell the people that are listening that would maybe want to find out more about your guild, or that might be interested in joining your guild, if you have a website that they can go to and read more about you and maybe apply to your guild, or contact you guys if maybe they want to join with you. So go ahead, Pyrite.
Sure, we have a public forum that you can contact us on. It's at www.salley.ws/DTA. And you can find that on the My UO pages too, under our guild.
There you go. Go ahead.
Love to hear from anybody that's interested in coming to Siege and coming to check out DTA.
There you have it, people. And yeah, as you can see, they seem to be a bunch of really, really nice people. So I might actually head over and go pester them from time to time, and they can walk my newbie butt around. And well, that does need to wrap up our show. So I'm going to give everybody a chance to say a few words of goodbye. So Filthy, you're at top of the list, so go ahead.
Good night, everybody. And Siege is a different place, but it's fun. And it's challenging, but fun. Night.
And we had Hope. Go ahead, Hope.
I just want to say thank you for inviting us on. We had a good time telling you all about Siege, and don't be scared. Come join us. It's a good time.
And Pyrite, go ahead.
I want to thank you for having us. It's been a very good time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure having you. And last but definitely not least, we have Kira, if you want to say your goodbye.
Yeah, well, we may look scary, but we are not scary, and the same goes for most people on Siege.
Well, this was the interview with the Delucia Trade Association from Siege Perilous, and I had a great time having them with us. I hope you guys enjoy this. It was very, very, very informative for me. They have answered a lot of things that I've always wondered about. There's so many more things I wanted to know about, but like I said, maybe we'll have to invite them over again for another interview and find out more. And especially to find out how ever the whole personal blessed deed issue has been handled down the road. But it was the community interviews with DJ Sakara and with our local brat Viceroy. Everyone, please stay tuned for the next show, which is the Cesarian Voices, that will be starting shortly. And also don't forget to tune in for our other interviews. Next weekend, next Sunday, we will be interviewing the Syndicate of Atlantic, LL, better known as LLTS. And so you want to tune in for that, and our usual talk shows every Saturdays, and our many other very interesting shows during the week. So thank you everyone again, and stay tuned for the Cesarian Voices. This was DJ Sakara, signing off.